What's up guys? Today I'm going to be replacing the crankcase ventilation valve on my 2000 BMW 540. And the reason I'm doing this is because it has been making an absolutely horrible noise. Alright, so here are a couple of the key indicators that pointed me to the CCV. Number 1, I started experiencing a stumbling or rough idle on cold mornings. Number 2, I often hear the noise that I just showed you when the vehicle's up at operating temperature and I'm in stop and go traffic or driving through a neighborhood. Number 3, there's a lot of suction at the oil cap, which I'll show you here in a second. And number 4, you may see bluish or white smoke coming from the exhaust. So if you're experiencing similar symptoms, chances are your CCV has failed, so let's talk about how we replace it. As I mentioned earlier, this repair is for a 2000 BMW 540, which is fitted with the 4.4 liter V8 M62 engine. BMW actually used this engine across a couple of different vehicles during the late 90s and into the early 2000s, including the 98 to 2003 540, 99 to 2001 740, and the 99 to 2003 X5. There are even some non-BMW vehicles with this engine, including the 2000 to 2004 Morgan Aero 8 and the 2002 to 2005 Range Rover. So this repair will be the same for all of the previously mentioned vehicles. Underneath the engine cover at the rear of the intake manifold is where the CCV is located. I'm going to start the car up here shortly and then plug the port at the bottom of the CCV to initiate that whistling noise and that vacuum that is characteristic of a CCV failure. Alright, so now that we understand some of the common symptoms associated with the CCV failure, let's talk about the parts we're going to be replacing. Up top, we've got the Vaco CCV and the Victor Rines gasket. I bought both of these parts from ECS Tuning. It ran me about $40. I'll include links in the description so that way you can buy these products as well if you need to. If this is your first time removing the CCV, you're going to need a T30 Torx bit to remove the 7 bolts that mount the CCV to the rear of the intake. Now the recommendation is that after you've got the CCV off the vehicle, you want to replace those T30 Torx bolts with M6 by 1mm by 25mm hex cap screws, so that way if you ever need to do this job again, it will be a little bit easier. Before I get started on the CCV, I want to remove the 2 air boxes on either side of the engine bay to give myself a little bit more room when I'm working on the back side of the intake. So you'll start by removing these 3 clips, and then you can twist and pull that to the front of the vehicle to get this piece off. And then you can get this tray out by removing this top cover and then pulling this straight up. As far as the CCV is concerned, again, if you've never done this job before, there are 7 T30 Torx bolts around the perimeter of the CCV. There are 4 hoses. The 2 up top are held in by these yellow clips. So you just get a screwdriver, push that clip towards the back of the vehicle, and then you can slip the hose off. This hose right here, though, has a non-removable hose clamp if you've never done this job before. So you'll actually have to cut that off and replace it with a small hose clamp like you see that I've already done. And then down at the bottom, there's the 4th hose. So just get something down there like a screwdriver to kind of give you some leverage and pry that off when you're taking the CCV out. So here's the CCV that I just pulled off the car. You can tell that there's a little bit of oil residue on the inside surface, but I want to give you a quick tip on how to extract these bottom 2 bolts because they're going to be by far the most difficult. Since there's not a lot of space between the CCV and the firewall, it's going to be really difficult to maneuver the socket and the ratchet back behind to extract these 2 bottom bolts. So you're going to have to get a little creative, and what I recommend doing is finding a Torx bit that's a little bit shorter than this and does not have this rear socket adapter, and instead slip this 1/4-inch wrench around the outside, similar to this. Slip it around, and then you can maneuver it to the back side of the intake and work on those two bottom bolts. You're gonna have to be a little patient, but that's my recommendation. So I wanna show you the space that we're dealing with behind the intake. This should help explain why we can't use the ratchet for the two bottom bolts. The vent pipe with the hole in the center will slip over the grommet on the face of the CCV, but it is critical that you handle this pipe carefully. With that said, I'm going to replace the gasket and work on mounting the CCV. The new CCV has been installed and all of the hoses have been reconnected. So I'm gonna start the car and see if I mess anything up. I've been driving the car for a couple days now and I haven't had any issues resurface. So replacing the CCV solved the rough idle and cold start and the terrible whistling noise that I was experiencing. Here's a list of all the tools and the parts that you will need to complete this job. I'll include links in the description down below for everything that is listed. If you feel like this video helped you, feel free to leave a like. If you've got any other questions, leave a comment down below. Otherwise, best of luck with your repair, and I'll see you in my next video.